Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You're in a new module. This module will be about prompting, shaping, and chaining. They all relate together. This was sort of my extra kind of concepts, I would say, that I could have split this up into prompting, then a module on shaping and chaining, but those would be just such small modules that I put them together. They do all relate together though, but prompting is hugely important. It's really, you're going to learn a lot in this module of things that you'll actually do as a behavior tech. What is a prompt? Prompts are cues or supports that help a learner perform a desired behavior. We utilize them to increase the chance of a correct response while learning, and there's a lot of different types of prompting. And so we're going to talk about stimulus prompts in this video, but we'll also in the next video talk about response prompts. So what are stimulus prompts? So stimulus prompts are anything that changes material or environment that highlights the correct response. They occur before the behavior. They guide attention to the relevant stimulus, reducing errors and building confidence during instruction. Why would we use this? You might use this to highlight the correct response. So you might use it to draw the learner's attention to the right information, providing accuracy. You might use this to reduce errors during learning. Stimulus prompts can help prevent mistakes and build the confidence. It also can provide temporary support. So there's something that we're going to gradually fade for independence performance. So that's true of all prompts, response as well. We're always, even if we're utilizing them, we're going to gradually fade them away. And we're going to tailor the prompt to the learner's need. It's funny, you'll find that different learners like different prompts. They respond better to different prompts, and then others respond better to other prompts. And so you're gonna learn like, oh, this is the way this individual likes being prompted. Occasionally, kids love all prompts, and those are the ones that get most prompt dependent. It's actually really kind of cute. I've had clients who request the prompt during instruction. Even though they know the right answer, they'll like want me to move their hand towards the right one because they're so prompt dependent. So that also does happen. We do want to remove them eventually, but you want to watch your learner with all these different prompts and see if there's one they're responding better to than other prompts, and then you would use that one the most. Size prompt and color prompt typically would go under an umbrella of something called a stimulus prompt. They all fall under stimulus prompt, but these aren't, so you're not going to find that specifically on the task list or on the exam, but they'll just be stated as stimulus prompt. I find that it really helps people learn when I show it in this way. Now, position prompt and movement prompt are like their own prompt category, but they also are a stimulus prompt. Stimulus prompt just means that this is something that we do to the stimuli before we start the trial or start the learning process. Positional prompts help a learner's attention to the correct item by placing it closer to them than the other options. This can be particularly useful for learners or tasks with multiple stimuli. And everyone goes with this, it's all cards, right? So you're working with flashcards. You put the correct flashcard closer to the person than the other distract. This can be used in many different contexts. If you're doing a task analysis for washing clothes and you have a bottle of detergent and a bottle of fabric softener, and like this step is the detergent, you would put the detergent closer to the person than the fabric softener. I mean, it's endless the ways that you can use positional prompts to make sure that they do the correct response. They give the correct response. At a table, you're learning the different silverware. A salad comes out. So you put the salad fork closer to the learner than the other utensils. I had a family who wanted their child to know all the different types of utensils for very elaborate dinners. So it could happen. You'll definitely be teaching someone fork, spoon, knife, like the simple stuff, but you might have to teach them salad fork and dinner fork and all that. I had to learn it to teach them. I wasn't very familiar with it. So movement prompt. So movement prompt involves motion to draw attention to the correct stimulus. This can be done by tapping, sliding, pointing at the correct card. So it's just something typically with your hands, and you're gonna make a movement to show them which which response is correct. Everyone thinks flashcards. You point at the flashcard when they're brushing teeth. Point to their toothpaste. If they're the adults in the house have a separate toothpaste. There's lots of different ways we use these movement prompts. I've had behavior techs call it pointing prompts, which is fine. But it could be any movement, not just pointing. Okay, so size prompt is a way that we're going to make the correct option larger than the others, drawing the learner's attention. So this one always takes more work. We can point to the correct one in a minute. We can include that on the fly, like, oh, they're not getting this right, I'm gonna just point. But size, you have to plan, right? So if you're having them point out in an array which things are numbers and there's letters, so there's like B1, C, D, E, and then a 4, you make the 1 and the 4 bigger, so they point to the 1 and the 4 as numbers. When you ask, point to the numbers in these symbols, you would have to plan that and create that, and then you slowly make the size smaller and smaller. This can't be used for everything, but it can be used for a lot of things. A color prompt is when you're gonna change the color so that they choose it correctly. Again, similar to size, takes a lot of planning, does help, with homework stuff. If they're circling the right word, that word could be red while the rest are black, and then you slowly fade that away. There's a lot of ways to use this in the community. If you're teaching them to drink water from the water fountain and you want to make sure they push the button for the water fountain, not for the fill your bottle up, that's always on the back of these water fountains these days. You color that button, like you put a red dot on that button so they push that right button. That would be a color prompt. Putting little colored stickers on the correct buttons is actually a fairly common one that we use a lot and does help a lot. Okay, we're going to talk about fading. You can gradually reduce the level of prompting over time to promote independence. You can randomize the placement of the items to prevent over-reliance on positional cues, and we can monitor progress so we can make sure that we're fading steps as the learner is ready for the next level. So the most common one you're going to use is that gradual reduction, especially for size, color, as well as positional. For positional, like the first few times working with cards, you put the card really close to them, and then you slowly make it less and less close to them. That's the most easy way to gradually reduce. For a color, if you're putting a little red sticker on the right button, you might cut it in half the next time, then cut it in half again, and then just have a tiny little bit of red and then no red. And then consistent placement, you want to make sure you're randomizing everything, especially with the flashcards, or you're not going to get any fading going on, and you got to monitor that. Prompt fading is gradually moving the prompts to help the learner achieve independence. And there's a couple different ways that we prompt fade, and we'll talk about that. The goal is to guide the learner towards independent performance. Here's a sample fading plan. We highlight the correct utensil using bright yellow, like you color it with a highlighter, the handle of the fork. And it draws the learner attention, and they keep picking up the fork when you're serving mac and cheese or a salad, the things we need for a fork. We might make it pale yellow so they pick up the fork. Then we might make it no color, and hopefully they still pick up the fork when they see the different types of food that we would need a fork for. You might do this with other utensils when they need those other utensils. So tips for you is always read the written skills plan carefully, because the prompt fading, the prompting all should be in there. There are times when we prompt on the fly, like a positional prompt or pointing, but all really good written skills plans and behavior plans will have prompting in it. You should follow that. Be consistent with the prompting and make sure if you're doing it on the fly, you're writing it down so we all know what's going on. I've had behavior techs, they're movement prompting, they're pointing all the time. The whole session, they're pointing, and that's not being written down. So I can't give them directions to fade it. I didn't know until I observed them. And then we sorted it. We could have sorted it quicker if they were just writing that down. Use the same prompt type and procedures as outlined and then document it, the levels and progress. So you're always documenting what kind of prompts you're using. And then you want to ask your supervisor if you're unsure how to fade. Sometimes it's hard. Pointing, like how do we fade pointing? Honestly, I've always taught that you just pull the pointing farther and farther back until you're pointing from your head level. So it's hard to even see the direction of where the finger's pointing if it's far back, and then you just stop pointing. That usually works pretty well, but there's other ways to do that. Common mistakes using prompts too long. And then they become prompt dependent. It's hard. You want them to do well. We all do. We want them to progress. We want them to these skills. If you have kids or you have like younger siblings or you've worked with kids before, you probably prompted them a ton, and it's like, it's hard to stop that. Using a different type of prompt than instructed, like adding in those movement prompts. I find movement prompts and verbal are the ones that people add in without knowing it the most. So just be aware of that and don't add prompts unless you intend to and document it. Not randomizing item placement can be a big issue. If it's the environment allows it, like if you're teaching the more formal dinner settings, you wouldn't randomize because those always are where they're supposed to be. But if you're just teaching fork use, someone might put the fork on this side, someone might put it on this side, someone might put it above the plate. There's no formal plan for that or a formal way to do that. It just depends on what you're doing. Forgetting to fade systematically, so forgetting to really slowly, gradually fade. You fade too fast and then they stop doing it correctly. Highlight your key information, so make sure you're using those visual cues systematically. Gradually remove the prompts as the learner becomes more independent. Always promote that generalization, varied materials, and collect really good data. Collect data on how the prompting is going, what kind of prompts you're using, and all those things.